Hello everyone, welcome back to the Butterfly Monkey channel. Today will be a different topic instead of citizenship or business trust. Today will be about passports. Specifically pertaining to the Privacy Act statement on the DS-11 form. I'm going to go through each of these sections, not the sections, each of these authorities, right? So 22 USC 211A, 8 USC 1104, 26 USC 6039E, 22 USC 2714 AF. I'm not going to go through section of the Admiral James Nance and stuff. I don't have it here anyway. It's in a law library. Same thing with the fiscal years 2000, 2001 and the executive order. Those don't pertain to what we're discussing. But I leave it up to you to take yourself to the law library and go look them up. And then 22 CFR Parts 50 and Part 51. Those are the authorities for why they are requesting information from you. Okay? But I'm going to read this right here, this privacy statement, before I start completely. It says, purpose, we are requesting this information in order to determine your eligibility to be issued a U.S. passport. Your social security number is used to verify your identity, even though a social security number was never meant for that purpose. There are other ways to verify your identity. Routine uses. This information may be disclosed to another domestic government agency, a private contractor, a foreign government agency, or to a private person or private employer in accordance with certain approved routine uses. These routine uses include, but are not limited to, law enforcement activities, employment verification, fraud prevention, border security, counterterrorism, litigation activities, and activities that meet the Secretary of State responsibility to protect U.S. citizens and non-citizen nationals abroad. Your Social Security number will be provided to the U.S. Department of Treasury and may be used in connection with debt collection, among other purposes authorized and generally described in this section. More information on the routine use for the system can be found in System of Record Notices State-05, Overseas Citizen Services Records and other overseas records, and State 26 passport records. Disclosure. Providing information in this form is voluntary. Be advised, however, that failure to provide the information requested on this form may cause delays in proceeding your U.S. passport application and or could result in a refusal or denial of your application. Failure to provide your Social Security number may result in the denial of your application consistent with 22 2714 AF, which is what we're going to look through, and may be subject to penalty enforced by the Internal Revenue Service as described in the federal tax law on instruction page 1, section C to this form. All right, so the first questions I'm going to ask myself, right, is first, who is eligible? What persons, what class of persons are eligible to even apply for a passport, let alone receive one, right? The second question would be, what persons are required to furnish a number? Does it apply to everyone? Two huge questions that must be answered. So, before I start, if you guys got personal issues or feelings with the terms U.S. citizen, United States, national, or anything of the like, and are stuck on a specific definition because you learned it somewhere else, then this video is specifically not for you because you do not understand context. So to start, I'm going to start with 22 USC 211A. Right here. 22 U.S. Code of United States Code 211A, authority to grant, issue, and verify passports. The Secretary of State may grant and issue passports and cause passports to be granted, issued, and verified in foreign countries by diplomatic and consular officers of the United States and by such other employees of the Department of State who are citizens of the United States, such as the Post Office, as the Secretary of State may designate, and by the chief or other executive officer of the insular possessions of the United States under such rules as the President may designate and prescribe for and on behalf of the United States, and no other person shall grant, issue, or verify passports. Unless authorized by law, a passport may not be designated as restricted for travel to or for use in any country other than a country with which the United States is at war, where armed hostilities are in progress, or where there is imminent danger to the public health or the physical safety of United States travelers. So this right here allows them to restrict your travel based on what? No, sorry. Not restrict your travel, restrict your passport for the purposes of traveling under that passport, under which cases the United States is at war, armed hostilities, and so forth. Right? This is what the authority is for this section. To understand this, there shouldn't be much to break down here aside from this, except to the extent that they are restricting the passport to be used to go to these specific locations under this criteria. That's all that matters in this case right here. The second part right here is, of course, Title 8 USC 1104. Title 22 is, of course, the Secretary of State statutes code, right? Section 8, Title 8 is immigration, which literally should have no application to any person born within any state of the Union. Period. Anyone who thinks otherwise is wrong. Title 8, period. That means all the definitions too that people like to use, like national. I'm not going to read this because all this is the powers and duties. I'm not going to read the most. I'm going to read part A. The Secretary of State shall be charged with the administration and the enforcement of the provisions of this chapter. The chapter means chapter 12. Chapter 12 is the whole thing, immigration and nationality. That means subchapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The chapter and all other immigration and nationality laws relating to 1. The powers, duties, and function of diplomatic and consular officers of the United States, except those powers, duties, and functions conferred upon the officers. So this means all powers that were not already given to some officer, like the ministerial powers. They don't deal with it no more. They gave it to their little officers. Relating to the granting or refusal of visas. Number 2, the powers, duties, and functions of the administrator. And number 3, the determination of nationality of a person not in the United States. He shall establish such regulations, prescribe such forms of reports, entries, and other papers, issue such instructions, and perform such other acts as he may deem necessary to carry out such provisions. He is authorized to confer or impose upon any employee of the United States, with the consent of the head of the department or independent establishment under whose jurisdiction the employee is serving, any of the powers, functions, or duties conferred or imposed by this chapter or regulations issued thereunder upon officers or employees of the Department of State or of the American Foreign Service, right? So this is important here, to the extent that what? It's just their powers. Who do you contact? Who is it that's denying you? Who is it that you got to go speak to? Things of that nature, right? The next one is going to be the big one. So let's go. Should I do this one first? 22 USC. Let's do this one first. 22 USC 2714 AF. All right. So this is revocation of denial and of passport in case of certain unpaid taxes. So this is the one that pertains to what? The Internal Revenue Service. All right. A and D are omitted. So Part E, authority to deny or revoke a passport, except as provided under subparagraph B, upon receiving a certification described in section 7345 of Title 26 from the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of State shall not issue a passport to any individual who has a seriously delinquent tax debt. So that means they have to know that you have a tax debt. And then the Treasury has to give you a form or send the Secretary of State a form saying that you're okay to get a passport. Part B, emergency and humanitarian situations. But nonetheless, is that the Secretary of State has knowledge that you have a serious delinquent tax debt, and they cannot issue a passport to you unless the Treasury sends some type of certificate under this section, under Title 26, to say you're okay to get a passport. Part 2, or Section 2. In general, the Secretary of State may revoke a passport previously issued to any individual described in paragraph A1, 1A. So that's this guy, the guy who is seriously delinquent on a tax debt. Subsection B of 2. If the Secretary of State decides to revoke a passport under subparagraph A, right, this one, the Secretary of State, before revocation, may limit a previously issued passport only for return travel to the United States, or issue a limited passport that only permits return to the travel. So this is only coming back. And 3, and even though I'm reading this whole thing, even though the section called for 2714A, paragraph F, right? Part 3, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of State, and any other designees shall not be liable to an individual for any action with respect to the certification by the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue under that certification to be approved for that, if you're a tax delinquent. So F, revocation or denial of passport in case of individual without a Social Security account number. So this is the application without the number. A, 1A, except as provided under subparagraph B, upon receiving an application for a passport from an individual that is either does not include the Social Security number issued to that individual, or include an incorrect or invalid Social Security number, willfully, intentionally, and negligently or recklessly provided by some individual. So this is an or question. This is an or statement. So they could deny you, right? Revoke or deny a passport if you do not include it, if you were issued, or you included incorrect or invalid, and you did it willfully, intentionally, negligently, or recklessly. The Secretary of State is authorized to deny such application and is authorized not to issue a passport to the individual. And then Part B is, of course, the exception, emergency, and humanitarian reasons. The reasons for revocation, right, meaning taking away what they already gave you, right? Because the passport is a privilege. It is a benefit from the federal government, but it is a property right, meaning they cannot deny you the passport based on just traveling purposes outside of the scope that we are at war, hostilities, and the other stuff from the other section. The Secretary of State may revoke a passport previously issued to any individual described in paragraph A1A. Part B, limitation for return. So same thing. They only give it to you, the limitation on the passport, for you to come back home. And that's it for this section. But nonetheless, the core stuff here is what? Part F. They could deny you if you don't put it on there, right? to that individual, if you were issued to that individual, or you gave an incorrect or invalid. So now the question here is, are you one of those individuals who are required to get one? All right? Are you required to submit a number? Right? So the next one is going to be 26 USC 6039E. Right? This is information concerning resident status. Right? General rule: notwithstanding any other provision of law, any individual who applies for a passport, a U.S. passport, or applies to be lawfully accorded the privilege of residing permanently in the United States as an immigrant in accordance with the immigration laws shall include any such information, any such application, a statement which includes the information described in Section B. So for us, it will be this. We're applying for a passport. B, information to be provided. Information required under subsection A shall include the taxpayer's tax identification number, if any. So this is even if you have one, right? In the case of a passport applicant, any foreign country in which an individual is residing. So in the case of a passport applicant, so you have to be a passport applicant. However, this is defined. Any foreign country in which the individual is residing. So you have to have a residence in another country. Number 3, in the case of an individual seeking permanent residence, information with respect to whether such individual is required to file a return of tax imposed under Chapter 1 for such individual's most recent 3 taxable years. So Chapter 1 is income taxes. If you guys don't know, since they're talking about tax law, Chapter 1 has to reflect income taxes. And so this is 4 things. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Such other information as may be prescribed. So damn near anything that they want. Right? But of course, it can never be anything that they want. Penalties. Any individual failing to provide a statement required under subsection A shall be subject to a penalty equal to $500 for each such failure. For each such failure, unless it is shown that such failure is due to reasonable cause and not willful neglect. So there's a catch. Information to be provided to the Secretary. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, any agency of the United States which collects or is required to collect the statement under subsection A shall provide any such statement to the Secretary and provide to the Secretary the name and any other identifying information of any individual refusing to comply of subsection A. Noting in the preceding sentence shall be construed to require the disclosure of information which is subject to 245A of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So here they're asking for the organization that you went to go apply for a passport. They're saying if any such person did not comply with A, right, in accordance with the Immigration Act, which doesn't apply to you technically, right, then they need to submit the information to the Secretary of State, everything about you, because you didn't comply with their laws. The question is, are you complying? The Secretary may, by regulations, exempt any class of individuals from the requirements of this section if he determines that applying this section to such individuals is not necessary to carry out the purposes of this section. All right, any exemption is a privilege. So there has to be reasons for this, that you were liable in the first place, but then they said, nah, you don't have to. So the question is, of course, are you liable? So with this, we're going to go to the regulations now, meaning the agent. So the way it goes is you got the statutes at large that create the law based on the Constitution. Then it goes to the United States Code, which is this. And then it goes into the regulations through the Federal Register first, right? For the agencies to be able to enforce these codes. So again, information reported by passport applicants. See how they changed this? Information concerning residence status. Then they changed it to information reporting by passport applicants. Every individual who applies for a passport or a renewal of a passport, and they're calling them passport applicant, right? So they're saying every individual who applies for a U.S. passport or the renewal of a passport is a passport applicant. Other than a passport for diplomatic, military, or other official U.S. government business, shall include with his or her passport application the information described in paragraph B1 of this section in the time and manner described in paragraph B2 of this section. Let me drink some water. Section B, Part 1. In general, the information required under paragraph A of this section shall include the following information. 1. The passport applicant's full name and, if applicable, previous name. 2. Passport applicant's permanent address and, if different, mailing address. 3. Passport application taxpayer identification number, TIN, if such a number has been issued to the passport applicant. A TIN means an individual social security number issued by the Social Security Administration. A passport applicant who does not have a social security number must enter zeros in the appropriate space on the passport. Now, the question for me would be, what does the difference between being issued or not issued and does not have are? What is the difference between hasn't been issued and does not have? Right, would be 1. We were issued, in my opinion, we were issued because our parents got us one. Do not have means you never applied at all. No one has on your behalf. And so this is an and question, an and statement. And the passport applicant's date of birth. All right. Now, what do you see different here from this section? Here, they tell you the passport applicant's permanent address and, if different, mailing address. If we go back to the code, what do they state? Because this is the same thing, information to be provided. In the case of a passport applicant, any foreign country in which the individual is residing. This regulation applies to the address of a foreign country, and I'm going to prove this. Just because they're stating it different here doesn't mean it's not the same. Remember, there's a hierarchy in these statutes, right? You have the Constitution, statutes at large, United States Code, Federal Code of Regulations, and then you have everything else that goes down the line from there with state and municipalities and all the other stuff that use the federal codes and regulations, right? Section 2, time and manner for furnishing information. A passport applicant must provide the information required by this section with his or her passport application, whether by personal appearance or by mail to the Department of State, including the United States embassies and passport. Now, the time and manner, of course, is on the application itself, right? Whether you have to appear in person depends on the context. Are you applying for one for the very first time? You're going to have to appear. If you already have one and you're in their files, then you could do it by mail. I'm not going to read the penalties because that's a given and that's the last thing of it. But they also state here too that the failure is due to reasonable cause. Now, I want to use this reasonable cause hyperlink, but I can't. This right here is not a legal document that I'm reading from. All this is Cornell Law School. I can't use this hyperlink and say this is verification, this is proof, or this is the source of the term reasonable cause. So whatever this term reasonable cause mean, I have not found it yet. So if I have not found it here, right, then it has to be like the next step would be going to the Federal Register, right? The congressional record, the intent of Congress. And if it's not found there, then you could use, then how the judge would use it, right, would be what? He would use Black's Law Dictionary or something to that effect. It goes down the line also, just to understand that. So for this purposes right here, for section 6039E, both the code and the regulations, right? The important thing to note here is the address. They're asking for a foreign address here. Now, yes, of course, some of you are thinking, oh, I live in a foreign state, right? The state that I live in is foreign. Okay, granted. Let's say that you're right. Well, then this right here applies to you. This right here absolutely applies to you if you are claiming that you are foreign and that the state that you live in, like Texas, is foreign in this context. That's what I'm telling you right now. If you are claiming that Texas is a foreign country in this context, I'm being specific here, in this specific context, then this statute applies to you and you have to give up all this information. You have to give up a tax identification number and all that. I'm going to prove that you're wrong. So the next thing I'm going to look at, right? So the questions were at the very beginning. What persons are eligible to get a passport in the first place? And what persons are required to submit a number, identify a number, right? This right here is the Federal Register, right? It's document number, Federal Register, volume 57, number 248 from 1992, page 60. Well, let's start right here. It's up higher, right? It's this page right here. 61,372. So 61,372 is the page. It's not up here. No, that's different. Okay, so I'm right. All right. I'm not going to read all this. I'll leave this up to you. I already have that pinned in my Telegram page and everything, so you guys should have every opportunity to read this yourself. What I am going to go to is the purpose and the scope of Section 6039E, because that's what this amendment is. That's what this Federal Register is. It is an amendment for 26 USC 6039E. 6039E was first enacted in the 1986 Internal Revenue Code. All right. So this is 6 years later, amending that. Now, the original purpose for the 6039E was for expatriates, people who have left this country and are domiciled somewhere else. This is why they're asking for foreign information, foreign addresses, and giving you the opportunity to come back home. This is the original intent of Congress, but it was amended. All right? So now let's see what they amended. Then there are two amendments, right? One in 1992 and the other one is 1996. And the one in 1996 has no application But if you want to go read it, here is the section for it and where you can find it. Just go up on the Federal Register, punch in the same numbers that I just gave you for this register, and you'll see which amendments it gave. I read both of them. There's only one that applies. So, purpose and scope. Section 6039E is intended to improve tax compliance by resident aliens and U.S. citizens or nationals living abroad. So resident here are not temporary. Resident aliens will be permanent residents. And U.S. citizens or nationals living abroad. So this applies to these three classes of persons. Under what context? You have to be living abroad. That's how you have a foreign address. So for those who are construing that the state that you live in, if you think that you are living abroad because you live in Texas, you're about to find out that you are wrong in terms of this context right here. Not the definition that you read in some statute, some court case, or some guru, or whoever else. Some Black's Law dictionary. It's this context. With respect to U.S. citizens or nationals living overseas but not filing returns, the Congress foresaw that collection of tax after identification might be difficult, but nonetheless sought both to give the Internal Revenue Service a further source of information regarding these non-filers, and to notify these overseas persons of their continuing duty to file U.S. tax returns. With respect to persons applying for permanent residence, Congress was concerned that new residents might derive income from foreign sources not subject to normal information reporting or withholding. Now, this applies to residents, though, not to the U.S. citizens or nationals. Therefore, Congress concluded that the Internal Revenue Service needed an additional tax compliance measure for these persons. The new reporting provisions give the Internal Revenue Service information about these persons and would otherwise be unavailable. How is this not blatantly obvious and in your face of who is required to give up a social security number? How is this not blatantly obvious that it pertains to persons who are living overseas or living abroad? And if you, like I said, if you believe that you living in California, Texas, or wherever else means that you're a foreign person and living abroad, well, then this shit applies to you and you have to give up a number. I'm going to read this other section because the rest is going to be the same that I just read. So because this has happened in 1992, you know, this same stuff, the wording and all that stuff is going to be the same in terms of the Code of Federal Regulations and the code. But I'm going to read the explanation portion. The purpose, the proposed regulations in this document. Number 1, prescribe the information to be gathered by processing agencies, generally the Department of State and Immigration and Naturalization, INS, of the Department of Justice. Number 2, exempt certain applicants and applications from Section 6039E and this section. So it exempts certain persons. Provide alternate procedures for agencies reporting Section 6039E information to the Internal Revenue Service. Number 4, require that information transmitted by other agencies include information concerning any persons who fail to comply with the information required. So these are the same things that they stated earlier on for those agencies to report back to the Secretary of State. for refusing to comply or whatever else, which what they believe that you're refusing to comply with, right? Number 5, restate the penalties imposed on non-exempt applicants who fail to comply. In addition, the proposed regulations provide rules and examples concerning the possible unavailability of information to passport and immigration applicants. The Department of State, though its domestic passport agencies and through its embassies and consulates abroad, processes all passport applications. Applications for lawful permanent residence or immigrant visa applications are processed by both the INS domestically and the Department of State overseas. Forms used in these processes have been or are in the process of being modified to request information required by Section 6039E and these proposed regulations. In some instances, the forms request additional information pursuant to the authority granted in Section 6039B4. So all these things here, they have them already written down. It is everything that I already read in these two portions. It just, this is the proposal for all the amendments that were later and that you could see today in the statutes and the code. Okay? And I'm not going to keep reading. I'll leave this up to you guys to read it. And like I said, it's going to be the same thing, right? But the other thing that I am going to read is passport applicant. Here are the definitions, which the definitions are in the code and the regulations too, right? Country of residence means the country in which the applicant resides at the time of the application. Passport applicant means any person who applies for a U.S. passport other than a person who applies for a U.S. passport for use in diplomatic, military, or other official U.S. government business. So diplomatic, military, all mean official U.S. government business. Where's B2 at? So B2 is this, country of residence, right? And then this, they ask you for requirement of reporting, right? Passport applicants must include that in the application the following. And this is the same thing that's in the code. Name, address of applicant within the country of residence as defined in B2, which they didn't define it. They just said in the country of residence that you are currently in when you apply, right? Which we all know because of what they stated up here for the purpose and scope is a foreign address. They just don't tell you in the code or in the regulations. Well, they don't tell you in the code. In the regulations, they tell you in the code. All right, so all these things are in what I already read. All right, so getting that out the way, what have I stated so far? All right, the persons required to submit a number are the persons, are residents and U.S. citizens and nationals of the United States that have a foreign residency. That's what this applies to. The original context of 6039E, which you guys, I encourage you guys to go find it at the law library, right? Was for expatriates. And again, that still applies to what? A foreign address. All right? Now going back to the passport application. Now with the understanding of who it applies to, right? Now we're going to go ask who is eligible to go get a passport. So we're going to go under 22 CFR Parts 50 and Part 51. I don't got 50 here. So let's go look up what Part 50 means and what is it for. So Part 50 is nationality procedures. All right? Procedures of determining United States nationalities of persons abroad. So this would only apply if you're abroad. Period. So 50 will, unless you're one of those persons who in this context for the passport, you believe that you, in the state that you live in, the state of the union that you live in, right, is considered abroad, then this applies to you. So let's look up definitions. United States means continental United States, the state of Hawaii, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the Virgin Islands of the United States, the Canal Zone, American Samoa, Guam, and any other island or territory over which the United States exercise jurisdiction. Now, if this definition, to me, this is the American Empire. This includes, it's on my phone, right? But this includes all the 50 states, including Hawaii, the Commonwealth, Puerto Rico. This is the American Empire. If it excludes somebody, right, I don't see who. Because look at what they said. And any other islands or territory over which the United States exercises jurisdiction. The term national means a citizen of the United States or a non-citizen owing permanent allegiance to the United States. So in this context, for this part, because these definitions only apply to this part, right? National means two things: a United States citizen and then a person who owes permanent allegiance to the United States. Two things. Now, if you notice, they don't define United States here. Let's see if we click on it, what it gives us. It gives us section 50.1. It doesn't define citizen of the United States. Right? So I'm going to skip all this because Part 50 should not apply to you. The department, to continue though, the department shall determine claims of United States nationality when made by persons abroad on the basis of an application for registration, for a passport, or for consular report of birth abroad of a citizen of the United States. Such determinations of nationality may be made abroad by a consular officer or a designated nationality examiner. A designated nationality examiner may accept and disapprove applicants for registration and accept and disapprove applications for passports and issue passports under the supervision of the consular office. Designated nationality examiner shall accept, adjudicate, disapprove, and provisionally approve applications for the consular report of birth abroad. The consular report of birth abroad may only be issued by the consular office, who may review a designated nationalities examiner's provisional approval of an application for such report and issue the report if satisfied that the claim to nationality has been established. All right. The thing that I don't like in this section, they don't tell you what abroad means. All right. If you have to understand, if they don't give you the definition, right, then you have to go down the line on what abroad means, what overseas means, if they don't ever give you the definition for that. Let's see, certificate of nationality. I heard some people want to do that too. Any person who acquired the nationality of the United States at birth and who is involved in any judicial and administrative proceedings in a foreign state and needs to establish his U.S. nationality may apply for a certificate of nationality as described by the department. An applicant for a certificate of nationality must submit evidence of his nationality and documentary evidence establishes that he is involved in the judicial and administrative proceedings for proof. So you have to be involved in some type of proceedings to even request some certificate of nationality. But in this section, they don't tell you specifically what persons are they talking about. They just say any person. They don't give it the locale or anything. Except the fact to the extent that he received that nationality at birth. So the next part is Part 51, Passports. Definitions. I'm not going to read all these. I leave these all up to you, but I am going to go to the bottom. The definition for United States when used in a geographical sense means continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands of the United States, and all other United States territories and possessions. Again, does this include only federal territories? I could prove that the continental United States means the 48 states that are bound together and touching at the borders. That's in the Omnibus Act for either Alaska or Hawaii, whichever was the last one to become a union state. That definition in that Omnibus Act, right, changed the definition to United States for every single title in the United States Code. And I mean everyone. Every single one of these got changed under the Omnibus Act for the definition of the United States. And they included it as what? To mean the 50 states that are touching each other by borders. But they also stated in that I have it on my phone. I'll share it in Telegram after I'm done with this, right? When I find it. The definition also included, unless the statute, the provision, the specific section that you're reading, like the specific title, change that definition. Why do I say that? Because just a minute ago, we just read chapter 50. Or part 50. Where they gave the definition for United States. And they said continental United States. And then the state of Hawaii. Why they said it like that, I cannot answer. But if you notice, Alaska's not here. Now, is Alaska included in this continental United States? Or does continental United States still only mean the 48 states that are touching each other? I do not know. I can't answer that in this context. I have not studied the intent and purpose of Congress specifically for this part. I have studied it for this part, for part 51 though. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying here. This definition for passports is the American Empire. The other one is the American Empire minus Alaska, unless it is included in continental United States specifically for that context. Why do I say for specifically for that context? Because right here it says the following definitions are applicable to this part. This part is part 51, not part 50. You can't commingle these definitions. You can't even use the term national in part 50 for this one, for part 51. U.S. citizen means a person who acquired U.S. citizenship at birth and upon naturalization as provided by law, and who has not subsequently lost such citizenship. This right here is not the definition of the 14th Amendment. This is a general definition that applies to everyone who has acquired it by birth, meaning even Puerto Ricans. The 14th Amendment don't apply to Puerto Rico. The 14th Amendment does not apply to the territories. The 14th Amendment does not apply to the Indian reservations. The 14th Amendment does not apply to the District of Columbia. That's why they stated it like this. Because you could acquire U.S. citizenship by a privilege of Congress, by a privilege of an act of Congress through their territorial laws. That's how Puerto Rico has received U.S. citizenship. I hope you guys understand this here. The 14th Amendment applies only to the Union States. If you were born in the state of the Union, what does that mean? You're a fucking United States citizen. But the thing here that you need to understand is that you have two citizenships here. In this context, for a passport, you are absolutely a U.S. citizen, whether you like it or not. You were born in one of the states of the Union. Why do I say this? The reason why I say this, because there is no doubt that I believe the same thing that most of you believe, that I am not a U.S. citizen and so forth. I wrote my initial paperwork that I sent to these agencies to change my status, and I was saying the same stuff. Because why? I was basically regurgitating what everyone else is saying and never looking it up myself. So the question at the very beginning I asked, who is eligible to receive and apply for a passport? A U.S. citizen and a U.S. non-citizen national. So if you still want to claim that you're not a U.S. citizen, then the only other person is a U.S. non-citizen national. Which means a person to whom U.S. nationality, means a person on whom U.S. nationality, but not U.S. citizenship, which a lot of us believe, right, has been conferred at birth under Title 8. So if you're claiming you're not a U.S. citizen, then that means that the only other person that's eligible for a passport is this one. That means you're saying that you're a national, that you have received nationality, but not citizenship under Title 8, Section 1408, or under other law or treaty. There is no other law or treaty for a person who was born in the State of the Union. So what is 1408? This is what I read, but I'm going to go read 1408. I'm breaking all of this down to prove a fucking point. So here, the term is complete. Nationals but not citizens of the United States at birth. Unless otherwise provided under Section 1401 of this title, right? So that's literally 1401, this one, the definition. The following shall be nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. A person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. This right here is the 14th Amendment. So let's see what United States means. Even under Title 8, right? This definition for United States means the American Empire. This is the true definition because I went to go look it up. Even though I'm using this hyperlink and I don't like using hyperlinks, I at least check the hyperlinks after and I will use them after I go research it myself. So this is the definition to nationals and citizens of the United States at birth. This is us. We're both of these. We both have a nationality and citizenship of the United States. And then they have all these other ones that do not apply to you. So going back to 1408. So this definition here is applicable only to the passport, because they told you 1408. So they're not talking about 1401 definitions here. So they're saying, unless otherwise provided in section 1401 of this title, the following shall be nationals but not citizens at birth. This is who they're talking about for passport purposes. None of you who were born in any state of the union qualify for this. None. If this doesn't apply, then there's only one other class of person that you can be specifically for passport purposes, and that's a U.S. citizen. And in this case, U.S. citizen cannot mean the federal citizenship only. It has to include all U.S. citizenships. That's both state and federal. Because if it wasn't, that means that you, as a state citizen, a citizen of Texas, a Texan, a Californian, could never get a passport. I hope this is clear. Here, the definition for U.S. national means a U.S. citizen or a U.S. non-citizen national. So now if we go into the application, evidence of nationality, fees, denial, and all this stuff, right? Let's go to general first. Passport issued to nationals only. These are the rules are who are nationals. A passport may be issued only to U.S. national. How did they just define what a U.S. national is? It means a U.S. citizen or a U.S. non-citizen national under 1408, under Title 8. All they did was simplify this. So instead of writing U.S. citizen and U.S. non-citizen national, they broke it down to one word. No different than, say, if you were writing paperwork, a contract, and you wrote down that person means corporation, individual, association, trust, and all that. But you're going to use this word person 100 fucking times in your paperwork. Are you telling me you're going to write down corporation, association, individual, and trust every single time? Or are you just going to write down the definition of person at the bottom and make sure that that definition is understood, that it applies to the paperwork that you're writing? So this way, when they're reading that they read person, it means these 5 things. That's all they did right here. That is all they did right here. Types of passports. Let me see. There was one more thing, I think. The whole point of me doing this video is, of course, is who is eligible for a passport, which now we know is U.S. nationals. And new U.S. nationals means 2 things. And who is required to submit a number. All right? But there's one more thing that I believe that is important. Identity of passport of applicant. The applicant has the burden of establishing his identity. The applicant must establish his or her identity by the submission of a previous passport, other state, local, or federal government officially issued identification with photograph, or other identifying evidence, which may include an affidavit by an identifying witness. Now, but they also add, of course, they may require you additional evidence of identity as it deems necessary. Right? So for like myself, I don't have a state ID. I don't have no driver's license or any other local, state, or government identification. So I have to use an identifying witness. Doesn't the Bible say this? At least they accept only one witness, where the Bible says, bring 2 witnesses plus yourself to make 3. Now, the other stuff they're going to require you, right, they might ask you for is, hey, do you have a billing statement from whatever, right? Your utility bills, phone bills, and all that shit. Those are commercial contracts that are voluntary. Social security number, voluntary information. Voluntary to have it. So you could deny, say you don't have none of these. You could give them whatever reasons you want why you don't have a utility bill under your name. You could be a trust fund baby or whatever excuse you want to give. I think there's one more. An identifying witness must execute an application in the form prescribed. So they don't allow the identifying witness to write their own, right? There are some statutes and other titles, especially for the Internal Revenue Code, where you could write your own paperwork, right? With substantially similar information of the information that they're asking you on one of their forms, but here they don't allow it. They don't give you. I haven't found it. Right. And the crazy thing about their passport application, which is, let's look it up real quick. What is it? DS-71? Yeah. Right. This ain't nothing. It doesn't even say anything. The only thing it says is, I solemnly swear or affirm that 1, I know and have reason to believe the above named person, meaning you, the above named passport applicant, is a citizen or a national of the United States. And 2, the above statements are true. That's literally all they're asking for. Even this is all you would be writing in an affidavit if you have a witness that's going to make their own anyway. Where was I at? Right here. And you could give up your own phone, your own picture. You don't have to. You don't have to take a picture with them. So, evidence of citizenship and nationality, burden of proof. The applicant has the burden of proof that he or she is a U.S. citizen or a non-citizen national. Persons born in the United States applying for the passport. So this is for people first time ever. Primary evidence of birth in the United States. A person born in the United States generally must submit a birth certificate. Now, the term United States here means the American Empire. The definition that they're using is under 51.1, the one I just read. The birth certificate must show the full name of the applicant's date of birth, the full name of the parents, and must be signed by the official custodian of the birth records. Secondary evidence. If the applicant cannot submit a birth certificate that meets the requirement of paragraph A of this section, he or she must submit secondary evidence sufficient to establish to the satisfaction of the department that he or she was born in the United States. Secondary evidence includes, but is not limited to, hospital birth certificates, baptismal certificates, medical and school records, certificates of circumcision, other documentary evidence created shortly after the birth, but generally not more than 5 years after the birth. So this is a biblical record, your witness testimony of people that were present during the birth of your kid. Like my buddy has 3 kids, 2 of them, right? His 2 youngest ones were born at home. They had home births. They made a record at home with witnesses. They don't have these other hospital records, baptismal certificates. They don't have the medical or school records, certificates of circumcision. All they have is other documentary evidence. Look at it says not more than 5 years after the birth, and or affidavits of persons having personal knowledge of the facts of the birth. This can't be stressed. So this right here, proof of resumption or retention of citizenship, means that if you were naturalized here, right, and you left the country, and you left for more than 5 years, right, they could consider you as abandoning your U.S. citizenship. But it is a prima facie evidence of that, because you have not declared your intent to abandon U.S. citizenship. But they will treat you as you have abandoned it until you speak the fuck up or come back into the country. An applicant who claims to have resumed or retained U.S. citizenship must submit with his application a certificate of naturalization or evidence that he or she took the steps necessary to resume or retain the citizenship in accordance with applicable law. We're going to go with denial and restriction. So here, the reason why people get denied of passports for certain drug traffickers is because this is a commercial crime. You owe something here. Now, you might have been convicted, but if you don't have the debt anymore, if you're not paying restitution and anything else, right, they can't deny you your right to travel. No, wrong one. So denial and restriction of passports. The department may not issue a passport except a passport for direct return of the United States in any case in which the department determines or is informed by competent authority that 1. The applicant is in default of a loan. For the repatriation of the applicant. And where applicable, the applicant's spouse, minor children, and other immediate families from a foreign country. And they're telling you to go see this section, 2671. So here they're telling you that they may not issue a passport except a passport for direct return in any case in which the department determines or is informed by competent authority that you are in default of a loan and you're trying to come back home. But a default under a loan under this section. Number 2, the applicant has been certified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services as notified by the state agency under this section, and to be arrears of child support in an amount determined by the statute. I think arrears means you're delinquent. Money that is owed and should have been paid earlier. So this right here, again, is commercial. And it's because of this section right here, you have some contract with the state that you're in for child support. because you never created a contract with your baby's mother for the payment of such for not the payment, for the discharge of your responsibility for your child is the proper term. Denial, of course, is covered for sex offenders. The department may refuse to issue a passport in any case in which the department determines or is informed by common authority that what? You have a warrant or felony. Here's the thing, though. The way they know is if you give up your social. They can't make you give up your social unless what? You have a foreign address. The only requirement for you to give up your social for the passport applicant is right here under the Privacy Act statement. And they're telling you you have to have a foreign residency. The applicant is subject to a criminal court order. The applicant is subject to a U.S. court order committing him or her to a mental institution, blah, 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 right? I'm not going to read all these. Subpoena, minor. Applicant is a minor. He could be denied. Applicant is subject to an order of restraint. Applicant is subject to outstanding state or local warrant or arrest. The applicant is subject to request of extradition. Where's the number at? Hey, look at how they define these. So they got the department may refuse to issue, right? If determines or is informed by competent authority, right? Down here it says the department may refuse to issue in any case which. So it doesn't mean under competent authority and none of the other shit, right? They're just saying in any case, period. Right? Applicant has not repaid a loan received under this section. For emergency medical attention, dietary supplements, and other emergency assistance, including, if applicable, assistance provided to his or her children, spouse, or immediate family members in a foreign country. So there's a debt that needs to be paid here. Applicant has not repaid a loan under this section. Applicant has been previously denied a passport under section 5161, which we're going to look. Or the department has revoked the applicant's passport or issued a limited passport for a direct return to the United States under 5162, and the applicant has not shown that there has been a change in circumstance since the denial, revocation, or issuance of the limit and warrants the issuance of the passport. So let's go look up what 6151 is. Sorry. For denial of passports to certain drug convicted traffickers. The Secretary determines that the applicant's activities abroad are causing or likely to cause serious damage to the national security or foreign policy of the United States. There's cases that I'm going to recommend people to read, right? And it applies to all right, two persons that are U.S. citizens applied for a passport. I think this is Kent versus the United States. They applied for the passport of the United States and were denied because the United States said that they had communist affiliations and so forth, right? The court overruled that because they cannot deny people based on some belief their right to travel anywhere. They can only restrict it in terms of what's within their scope. So what is their scope? And that's national security purposes. So that means they're at war with the country, hostilities between countries and so forth like that, right? But without reading these, the one that's applicable to us is this one. F. The department may refuse to issue a passport to an applicant who fails to provide his or her social security number account on his or her passport application, or who willfully, intentionally, negligently, or recklessly includes an incorrect number. But they can't do it willy-nilly. That's the whole thing. Here, they're making it seem like they could do it at will. But a passport is being denied a passport is being denied a liberty, a property right. They have to give you due process. This is important to understand. And reading the court cases that I will have for you, right? Which is going to be, let me look on my phone. I could give it to you guys right now. So this way you use the ones who are viewing this. Let's go to my Telegram. On their passports. Give me 1 second, 1 second. And I hope you guys get the gist of what it is I'm trying to say. And I'm going to challenge anyone, and I mean anyone, who could prove otherwise. Prove otherwise. So this court case right here, Kent versus Dulles is one. And the other one is Lind versus Rusk. I highly recommend that you guys read these court cases. If you guys make comments based on your opinions and shit you heard, I'm not trying to hear it. You guys could kick rock somewhere, especially if you're unwilling to read what it is that I'm providing and what it is that I'm researching, so you guys understand how I'm interpreting this. And that's it. That's it right there. Because these are the regulations. And we already seen the requirements, the purpose and the scope, who they apply to, who is eligible for getting a passport. If you guys still believe that you guys are not U.S. citizens, then so be it. I'm not here trying to convince you. All I'm trying to do is give you the information for you to determine how this information is in conflict with what you already believe in. I can't change that, and nor am I trying to. I don't got the time or the patience for that. And these are the definitions. 22 CFR 51.1. And I say good luck to everybody. And let me know if you have any questions. You know where to find me. I might open up the mic later to take questions. We'll see. So take care. Like and subscribe to the Butterfly Monkey channel. And take care.